The following is a conversation with Ritesh Dogra. Once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. That's what defines Ritesh in a nutshell. An alumnus of Indian School of Business, he enjoys and is passionate about building products and services from the ground up. Ritesh is currently dabbling with multiple tech-related problem statements as a part of his second entrepreneurial journey. Prior to this, he had a successful stint at Indegene, a life sciences focused company where he headed generative AI initiatives. His first startup was in digital health space and focused on enriching the interactions between patients and healthcare providers. He first started up after spending close to a decade in healthcare consulting space, getting involved in diverse set of projects. Ritesh is known for simplifying complex problem statements using very relevant analogies, a skill set that he seems to have developed from the first principles approach during his consulting stint. Do watch out for this skill set in action where he used very interesting analogies throughout this episode. Here is Ritesh Dogra.
Hello, Ritesh. Thank you for taking time for this podcast. We really appreciate it.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Devan. Hi, Akia.
So, Ritesh, as we take this conversation ahead, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you are up to these days? And we're also keen to hear about your experience with Indegene because we come to know that you are leading the special projects division there.
Sure. No, absolutely, Akia. And happy to take you through. So, what I'm up to these days, all interesting Gen AI stuff than you can possibly imagine. And I love to call it vertical, which is focused on life sciences and healthcare, and trying out a lot of different models, a lot of use cases. What started as a journey on Gen AI has moved on to building applications, building wonderful UXs, all of that. And I'm amazed by myself, the kind of powers that have been handed to me by Gen AI. So, yeah, all interesting stuff. And at Indegene, the entire Gen AI journey actually started off with Indegene, where what you call as special projects is the Gen AI vertical, which I was heading, Gen AI vertical for life sciences. And the entire focus was on giving solutions in life sciences, Gen AI solutions in life sciences to companies for a diverse set of use cases, right from, generating intelligence from data to generating content from those intelligence and insights, and typically solving a lot of problems which had been unsolved for. So the special project division, as you call it, was a task force of a few people. There were just four of us who were heading this and bringing all Gen AI projects in life sciences, Gen AI dreams in life sciences to reality, working with a lot of clients. And that's what I was doing in a nutshell there. It was GTM and, obviously all other stuff which enabled it. But yeah, all projects were focused on Gen AI vertical life sciences.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful, Ritesh. So, just for the benefit of listeners, I mean, of course, keeping the confidentiality aside, uh, can you walk us through a typical life cycle of a project and basically your role through each and every phase of the project life cycle?
Yeah. So the entire project life cycle, if I were to talk about, so just a step back from there, at Indegene, my mandate was pure tech, and the life cycle of project used to start off by engaging with clients, understanding their problem statement, and solving, creating specific solutions for them. Now, what I mean by that is, typically, with Gen AI, the opportunity came across for each pharma client to solve their specific use cases in their own processes. And that's when really the opportunity lies. So what we were doing was we were solving a lot of use cases with our domain experts, with our tech experts, and looking at delivering some of those solutions internally. And then what we created was finally a host of accelerators. Now, the in today's world, those accelerators could be called as agents, but that time, at least we used to call them accelerators. And the interesting or the funny part was each problem statement which any of the clients presented to us was either a mathematical equation of these accelerators. Either it was a plus b minus c, or a plus b and a fraction of 1 by fourth of c, or some of those. And it was certainly on that mathematical equations which actually came together to solve for some of these use cases which the pharma presented. Now, the typical journey was you would speak to clients, understand their requirement. Based on their requirement, you would present a solution framework. Based on the solution framework, the client would bite the solution, and then we would create POCs out of it to show how these solutions are working in their environment, and then testing some of those solutions out, they themselves seeing the benefits of those solutions come to life, and then obviously going into a production scale. So it was a very engaged solution centric strategy which we delivered with pharma clients.
All right, Ritesh. So, talking about this project life cycle, Ritesh, what were the typical stakeholders that you were dealing with on a day-to-day basis when you were managing any project?
So since you asked IKEA stakeholders, I would classify them in two categories. One is external and one is the internal. So the external stakeholders would be the domain experts from the client end, or subject matter experts, whatever you call, and the IT team, their technology team, which was working to solve some of these solutions together. From our side, it would be a mix of product managers who would really understand the business requirement and translate it to technical requirements, the engineering team who would build on those requirements, the client partners who would engage with clients to understand their specific problems, and obviously all of us came together to deliver some of those solutions.
Understood. Understood. So, Ritesh, I mean,
So Ritesh,
sorry, Rima.
yeah, sorry, yeah, just a follow-up question there, Ritesh. What were some of the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis, right? Be it with respect to execution of the project or be it with respect to dealing with stakeholders. What are some of the usual challenges there?
So the usual challenges would be, see, the first challenge would be to align all stakeholders to uh, a common problem. So see, what happens is when you are dealing with a new technology, you obviously want to achieve the moonshot, but for moonshot or for reaching the moon, you want to first build a spaceship and solve a problem of solve the step one of the problem. The step two of the problem would be to identify, let's say, astronauts or cosmonauts who are suitable for the spaceship, and then to build the space suits to suit their needs, etc. So where I'm going with this is to obviously reach the moon, you have to reach the outer space, and then you have to solve those problems. But quite a few times the problems became like moonshots, and everybody expected miracles to happen. That becomes a problem where you have to get them to appreciate that yes, miracle would happen, but then
Mm.
the miracles would not happen overnight. So you have to solve specific steps of the problem. So we always used to insist clients to pick up the most problematic step of the problem and try to solve for it. You can call it a node or a sub problem statement. Then look at fixing every possible failure point. So that used to be one problem. Um, and the other I think was also aligning people both internally and externally. Now I'm going back on my words. It might sound like an antithesis, but this is possible. So convincing people that technology can actually mine data, and technology can actually understand or read tables, or technology can read images. It takes a lot of convincing to do when it all finally came to a point where it was like uh, you know convincing by showing. Let's call it that way. So and that's where the trust with, I think, technology started. Where in some occasions I was left with no other way than do it myself and show that yes, this is possible. Obviously, there would be different pushback then, but at least at one step you have convinced people like what is happening and where is it going. So yeah.
Got it. Makes sense. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ritesh, my question was from the perspective of someone who has just graduated or, just want to start out in this particular industry. Now, of course, there are some skill set which are generic and can be transferable from any other experience, and there are some industry specific skill set also. So, with your experience with the industry so far, just wanted to understand what are some of the hard skills and soft skills that a person should have to succeed in a role like yours or to start out in a role like yours.
What I would suggest is the hard skills, where the hard skills what a person should have is, I think, the world, the way I see is moving towards vertical fast. So again, I'm fond of analogies, and for users of this session, I would rather explain in it very differently than always bring life sciences to picture. So today there are local chefs, there are five-star chefs, and there are Michelin star chefs, and there are different ways of making a coffee. And the best way to make a coffee could be to put in a certain amount of milk. The local chef could put in a certain amount of milk, sugar, coffee, mix it and give it. A five-star chef could actually look at a different quality of milk, a different quantity of water, and which is accurate to milligrams, and make sure that the right temperature is taken to mix all of this. A Michelin star chef could actually look at the thickness of utensil and the kind of burner, and quite a few different things. Where I'm going with this is to create right technology. The skill set which is going to be in demand is the Michelin star skill set, because if you are able to define requirements as precisely as that, the output of any AI model is going to be as precise as you want. But if you become the former, then what the AI model needs to do is to rely on, it will still do its work, but it will rely on third pieces of knowledge to get the right output. Now, the skill set which is going to be in demand is how much of a domain knowledge you have, and at the same time, how much tech you have laid your hands on. It is not about coding again. It is about how much of a tech experimentation can you do with domain expertise. And I think, I really don't have a name for it. Probably, I'm hoping that you guys could come out, or some bright folks could come out uh, with 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 the name of that skill set. But that's the skill set which is going to be in demand, and that's where everybody right now talks about vertical SaaS. Because see, large language models have been created. There will be a lot of research there. NVIDIA will come out with better models. There will be a lot of context and everything. But then, how do you enable all of that context to reality is where the skill set of an expert will start coming in, and it will be a domain plus big confluence. It won't be a generalist, but it would be people in domain who have started embracing tech. So that's the skill set, and companies are going to judge on that skill set sooner or later.
Sure. So does that mean, let's say if someone in strategy, right? Uh, you know, moving across different industries, rather than that, someone, let's say, focused on just one industry, let's say healthcare, and then building their domain expertise over years. So you're saying that the second path is going to be more favorable compared to the first.
Yeah, the second path will actually make you stand out very, very strongly.
Okay, understood.
Of course, like
And again, at the same time, it is about embracing tech as well. It's not about just being on fringes on the second path. For example, let's say, when historically all CAs were using calculators and scientific calculators, the CA who stood out was because of his domain knowledge and somebody who started accepting Excel as the new way of life. So, so same. I mean, I don't think it is too much of a counterintuitive to think of those roles, and that's again where a domain expertise plus a technology. See, if I don't understand a molecule, let's come back to life sciences. If I don't understand how a new drug is curated, how molecules come together to deliver the new drug, I can't claim to be a domain expert on a Gen AI enabled new molecule discovery. But some scientist who have been at the forefront of it, who has run it, can actually be the right person to develop some of those vertical SaaS models. And just keep specializing in the domain, embrace technology, and it will obviously take you places.
Sure, definitely. So, Ritesh, I was also curious to know a bit more about the baby steps that someone can take to actually, upskill themselves in this particular technology. Because, as you rightly said, the the skill set that will be in demand in the future will be a very specialized skill set built over a period of time through experience and constant learning. But for somebody starting out, what could be the baby steps? Because sometimes people have this initial, reluctance to maybe get into a particular technology domain, or just kind of like this thought process that maybe it is just too complex for them to pick it up. So, for someone with a non technical background, especially, what are some of the steps that they can take to get more comfortable with the latest advancements with Gen AI and also kind of be more industry relevant?
It's very easy. Use Perplexity. Uh, use Perplexity morning, evening, night, and just I don't want to be prescriptive, but it is directional. Use Perplexity morning, evening, or night. Figure out the hardest use cases you have been dealing with in your day to day life. Read how to solve it, and then ask Google, Gemini, Perplexity, anybody, like, what are some of the open source tools which I can use to solve this problem? And then just lay your hands on it. And at the beginning, you are going to have inertia. That's why I think the word inertia was even invented. You are going to have inertia in terms of usage. First day you will have inertia, second day you will have inertia. Third day onwards, once you have cracked it, it will work like dopamine. It will just work like dopamine. You won't be able to give up on it. And I swear that's going to happen. So the more you lay your hands on it, the easier it is going to be for you. Just that. There's absolutely no rocket science. And that's actually the simplest thing to do. The difficult thing to do is to find time. But once you find time, you you have done it. Because once you find time for it, you'll be amazed that you start finding more and more time for it. The first time you find time, you'll realize, okay, this is done. The second time you find time, you'll realize, wow, I can actually go and make my own coffee. The third time you realize that you have saved time, you'll be like, "Yeah, okay, 50% of the time I'll lay my hands on it, 50% of the time I'll make some fancy dinner for me. It's going to be an upward trajectory once you have broken the barrier.
Yep, definitely. I think once you have passed that inertia phase, the little successes kind of fuel the excitement and curiosity to try more and more use cases and definitely get better with time.
Absolutely.
So, Ritesh, from your experience so far, we can clearly see that your expertise somewhere lies in the intersection of technology and life sciences. So, we are also curious to understand how is tech shaping the life sciences, or broadly, I would say the healthcare space. What are some of the areas of growth in this particular industry, and what are some of the risks that you foresee given the nature of the industry, which is quite sensitive?
No, absolutely. I think the way to start is from um, uh, let's say, a bottom-up approach, I would say, in this case. So if you take the look at the entire healthcare or life science or any spectrum, the entire journey somewhere culminates with patients. Now, patients, historically, patients like me, you, and some of us who even have been in healthcare, or let's say who have been a part of the problem, uh, for want of a better word. So, you know, uh, all of us have had a role to play as a part of the problem, and all of us have been receiving end of the solution. So today, if anybody tells you that, you know, this is the drug, this is the prescription, and let's say, for example, a doctor writes, your symptom is gastrophageal or gastrointestinal reflux. If you don't understand what is gastrointestinal reflux, you don't even know what is the condition of your body. For the generative AI or for the technology to actually translate it to layman with accuracy, whether it calls it acidity or whether it calls it something else, or is inconsequential. But uh, the patients who have been at the receiving end of healthcare will actually start understanding the problems much better, because technology tools will help them understand. The patients will start understanding their labels better. And while we are talking about medicine labels today, me and you, all people who even want to read labels, can't read what is written in there, and then understanding it obviously is a challenge. But today, if let's say Ritesh is there, who is a pre-diabetic, for example, the days are not far and labels will start getting hyper personalized. Ritesh will understand if he's a pre-diabetic, what does the medicine label mean to him. So a lot of it will start driving in healthcare. Now, if I move a little upstream, another example where there are HCPs, healthcare practitioners, which we commonly call doctors, let's say, technology will become an aid to them to actually arrive at the right decision making. For example, if an 80-year-old is having wheezing symptoms at night, 12 o'clock, or let's say around midnight, the precise diagnosis is something which a clinical decision assistant will be able to scan through multiple data sources and bring bring to you where patients have presented similar symptoms in the past and what was it related to. The doctor will still be the decision maker, because it has to be a, let's say, a human in the loop. But then the doctor will be aided with the precise information in a short span of time, with which his decision making, his diagnosis, his or her diagnosis will start getting even more sharper. So, all in all, now, if I move very, very upstream, the example which I was talking to you about, bringing drugs faster to market. If you are able to synthetically mix and match molecules and arrive at new combinations or new therapies, that's going to bring drugs faster in the market. All in all, what is going to happen is patients are going to be immensely benefited, and healthcare is going to improve radically than it has in the past. See, unlike a retail where, if you get a better shampoo, there's only much better shampoo or some of those which can grow your hairs, or all of that has happened. There is so much impact that the technology can do, but in healthcare, it can immensely change the dynamics from start to finish, the way healthcare will be delivered, the way consumers will be benefited, and the way overall, again, might sound a very, 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 very high high goal to aim for, but then healthcare will keep becoming better. All that we have been talking about, the entire last mile access, this, that, a lot of problems can be solved. It's just that it takes creative thinking, imagination, and embracing technology to deliver our work.
Got it. And these are really very interesting use cases, right? That you just mentioned, which will have like a real impact. So one thing that I wanted to ask is, how has been the adoption? Because historically, healthcare, if you look at it, it is considered being a laggard in tech adoption. So how has been the adoption like, and where do you see the resistance?
The resistance, the adoption has been very slow. I think Gen AI is the pioneer in moving the adoption. If Gen AI would have been a person, uh, uh, a lot of people like me would have taken personal effort to facilitate. But yeah, today Gen AI as an entity has moved the needle quite significantly. That's the first part. But there are still barriers to adoption. Now, the barriers to adoption more stem from a lot of factors. So, uh, see, the problem is when people are aligned to an end objective, the adoption reduces. But the alignment is not there. There are naysayers, and today there are a lot of naysayers who don't want to adopt the technology. And the problem is not that these people have actually used technology. They are so averse that they have not even laid their hands. For them, Gen AI means Chat GPT, and then there would be some sporadic example where Chat GPT hallucinates. So there are a lot of barriers to adoption, which stem from the fact uh, that people have not tried it. But what I'm very hopeful about, Revant, is that, as with any new technology, once you cross the chasm or the curve, the adoption will be significantly higher. If I give you a very different example, like, a few years back, robotic surgery was considered as fad. Nobody wanted to go for robotic surgery. Companies made immense losses, right from Mako Surgicals to, Intuit Surgicals and all of them. Everybody made enough losses. Nobody wanted to use the market. Cut short, today's time, everybody is using a robo. And the funny thing is, patients are now pushing to get robotic surgeries. So the point is, any technology, what I've seen in healthcare and life sciences, once it crosses a certain barrier, the adoption starts getting phenomenally fast, and that's what we'll shortly see. So I'm very bullish that things will change. But the short term adoption, there are going to be certain challenges. There are going to be naysayers. There are going to be folks who feel threatened by it. There's enough chatter around, whose job will GPT take or whose job will not take. One thing I would suggest to anybody in the field, since this is meant for quite a few early start professionals, is don't get into discussions where will it take away my job versus will it take away your job. Those discussions are meaningless, inconsequential. It won't take away your job till the time you have the formula to get technology do the right job for you, and that's incorrect. So there'll be barriers in adoption, but I think we will see a point where it will be hugely adopted.
Got it. Now, if you look at the timeline, right, Hitesh, first was COVID that really drove the HCP engagement getting digital. And then later, like you mentioned just now, with generative AI, that has been enabler again on a different level. And then now with the incoming of agents, where you are able to execute workflows autonomously. Do you see these agents as well being like a catalyst in tech adoption?
Uh, so you mean the entire Gen AI agents which are coming in different?
Right, it's a subset. Yes, yes.
Absolutely. So I think, see, I'll tell you what. Nobody likes to see what are agents doing. There are different kinds of agents. There are intelligent agents. There are decision making agents. There are agents which do the grunt work for you. And finally, we are looking at humans finally consuming the output of agents right now as we stand, and building on top of it. What will happen is the human mind will continue getting more and more creative because the agents will be able to do more and more work for you. See, uh, in pre Google times, information asymmetry was a big problem. Today, information overload became a problem in between when, Google came. Right now, we are living in a happy age where we are getting precise information, and that can't be a problem. So if we look at that as a problem, then we are anyway sunk. Today, if you use Perplexity, for example, you'll get precise information with references, with sources to a precise question. Now, in a scenario where you are armed with good information and precise information, the decision making is something which can get much better. And that's where human mind, or let's say, the domain experts or anybody has to start playing. And that's where, every domain expert or everybody can start questioning everything like a child. So you don't have to say that, I agree with everything what the agent has given me as an output. The more you question the agent, the more fantastic your decisions are going to be. And that's where, the shift in thinking has to be radical for anybody using technology. You have to think as a mature adult while at the same time being a 5-year-old kid. And if you can balance it out, I'm sure there will be somebody soon writing a book on that. And sometimes I think of Thinking Fast and Slow as one of the books, which is true in today's scenario. But thinking like a mature and thinking like a kid, if you start balancing out everything, you are going to see amazing results which can be delivered.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ritesh, just switching gears a little bit in the conversation. So, I'm just taking you back to your role at Indegene. I just want to understand for the information of listeners, how is like a typical career progression in a special projects team like yours? And what are the levels that the people can start with and how they can typically progress to, more and more responsibilities and grow in their career? And similarly, I mean, of course, uh, people are also interested in knowing how the compensation growth is like in roles like these. So I can understand the figures are sometimes confidential. So a ballpark range or a growth percentage would be good enough for the listeners if you can help us with.
Yeah, sure. So let's come to the career progression first. I think there's a there's a vertical and there's a horizontal. So and I'm talking agnostic of the industry that I've been in. So the vertical is something the domain which you can be in X, Y, Z, anything. The functions again are different. Whether you are in you're within the sales in that domain, or whether you are in product, or whether you're in marketing, all of those. My advice would be to start taking a 360-degree look, because to grow in your career, if you are, let's say, for example, let's say you are in a firm which specializes in life sciences, then you are in a marketing function. The first thing is, look at everything as a possibility of tech enabled. So look at tech enabled marketing. Look at tech enabled this, or Gen AI enabled this, Gen AI enabled. Just taking a detour, if anybody says, Gen AI is only meant for product managers, 5 days back, I saw a company, somebody who has actually done an entire agentic inside sales process. And I was like, thinking that why didn't I do it till now? Right from getting the emails to automating emailers based on the profile of the person and based on their requirements in open source, whatever they are talking about and publish, to sending precise mailers for the solution which they are selling. So, like I told you, if anybody says, there's nothing for Gen AI in sales or nothing for Gen AI in marketing, they really need to take a hard look at themselves. So the first thing is, whatever vertical you are in and whatever function you are in, embrace Gen AI, because that will help you grow. The second is, don't look at your role in silos. If you are doing marketing, ask your manager to help you play a function in product, to at least get you in product conversations, and then the engineering team to get into marketing conversations. All of that. It's not too difficult to engineer. It's just that it requires a certain push within the organization. I think a very important perspective is for people who are starting is to look at the entire role as a 360-degree within your vertical or within your domain. And then from there on, pick things which really, really intrigue and interest you. I think the core is, if you have tried out everything, there will be certain things which interest you. And like, for example, let's say if you have done all of it, let's say building a product interests you. I know of people who have been in different functions and who have gone back to coding because they found it so amazing in a Gen AI landscape, and they are doing a phenomenal job of it. Why is that important? Is because whatever 5 6 days you work, uh, for any growth on your career, it is very important to enjoy that work. And in today's time, there are enough fascinating shiny objects which can help you enjoy that work. So find your mojo, find your niche, and then growing in it becomes very easy because you enjoy your work. And once you start enjoying your work, I think everything else starts taking a backseat. Again, why I'm saying that, because that is precisely what happened with me. If you look at my entire career trajectory, I I I I decided by conscious choice to not work with a large firms. It's not that I have anything against large firms, but I thought possibly, and they become very compartmentalized, and I didn't want to get into compartments, because that's precisely the reason why I did an MBA. And then once you have done that, so again in Indegene, the role which was communicated was fairly like, set up this entire org. So that's the first part. The second part to your question is the career progression. For me, the career progression, it started from GTM to right now. Again, at this point of my career, I'm starting toying with applications, building solutions. Um, if I look at designations from here onwards, it could be, again, I'm doing again my entrepreneurial stint 2.0, whatever you call it, or 3.0. I don't remember, but for anybody else, the career progression could be very interesting. It could be a chief innovation officer, or it could be a chief expert Gen AI, or anything like that. So the career progression is very interesting. Or it could be, leading a complete Gen AI, leading a complete tech company. So again, if you have done vertical SaaS, you could be the CEO of a tech company for that matter. So um, let's say, starting to look at a growth as a chief innovation officer in a large firm, to being a tech CEO in a small firm, all that is possible. In terms of your third question, IKEA, in the series of questions that you asked around career, the CTC jump actually depends on the market. Again, but I don't want to sound politically right or answer it diplomatically. Any jump from, let's say, a bizarre of 30% to 50 to 70%, all of that is possible, depending on how much have you done in your career. I hope that answers, or if I missed any sub bullet or sub point, let me know.
No, I think like it definitely gives a fair idea.
Great. So, Ritesh, let's shift gears, right? Let's talk about your beginnings, early stage, your family, your childhood, and then your pre-MBA journey.
Oh, sure. Okay. Um, that's a long time since I told anybody about it, but yeah, since you have asked, I'm d- do justice to it. So yeah, I was born and brought up in Bihar, a small place called Bhagalpur, which I think is a tier 3 town. And coincidentally, very funnily, I was the first one to go to ISB from there, which is again interesting, but not because of that, obviously. I did my graduation and other things outside, but yeah. So I was born and brought up there. I have one sister who again is a doctor, so a lot of healthcare interest uh, lay there. And then again, as no brainers for guessing that brother-in-law is also a doctor, which is again the norm. But yeah, coming from there, the idea, you can imagine 80 kids. The idea is to either you are a doctor or you are engineer or you are nobody. So I didn't want myself to be called a nobody. So I tried engineering and didn't make it up to exactly the main IITs. I think there were 3,200. I had some 3,260 or something. So I pursued marine engineering, which happened to be the entry happened to be JE, the same exam. And once I joined marine engineering, I felt it was quite monotonous, quite boring, to be honest. And it was supposed to be doing the same stuff again and again and again, and it didn't excite me beyond the time. And on record, I was never seasick, not even a single day of the entire career. So that was not something which bothered me, and traveling was not something which bothered me. Again, having been in consulting, there have been times when I was traveling 4 days a week. So nothing bothered me. It was just the monotony which bothered me. And then I heard about ISB, and the only college which offered 1 year MBA, and then a college which won't judge you for work experience, would rather embrace you for work experience. So it seemed like a match made in heaven. And what I've done all across my life, and I would love if more and more people do it and have the luxury of doing it. Let's call it this way. I always leave something and then start planning about the next phase of what I would be doing. And this has been a rinse and repeat for all my career. And the first time it happened was ISP. I left my job. Though I was sailing, I had the luxury of having a 5 months break. But I think I wanted to take that luxury out of my life. So I took that luxury out of my life, and me and one of my good friends from college. His name was Rishi Singh. He's in class 24. So me and he left our homes, moved to, and we decided that we will actually live life like a sannyasi to prepare for the ISB, because we were too gung ho about it. So it is very funny, and my friend hates me for that. So I decided that wherever we are staying, we won't have a pillow, and small place, and we just made rule for ourselves, and we started preparing for the GMAT. And then I still remember when I went there. I left my home after a week, went to Delhi, and I went to Princeton and asked them, what are the kind of courses that you have? They told this. I said, is there anything better than this? They said, the ultimate is one-on-one with teacher and spend as much as time you want in an academy. I said, okay, let's go with that. So we were very clear on, this is the only piece which we want to do. And obviously things don't always go your way. And I'm talking about some of this is obviously to benefit even people who are embarking on their journey. Just 1 week before GMAT Delhi classic season, rainy season, I had malaria and messed up the entire GMAT. And then I was like, okay. And then obviously my friend was there, family, everybody motivated me. Waited for another year, and then, not another year, waited for another month, sorry, and then gave back GMAT, and then ISB happened, and it was very good. And after ISB, I was clear that, I won't get back to doing what everybody wants me to do. Again, engineering could be one of those things, but yeah, I was very clear that I would do what I want to do. So I again started on this journey in healthcare, and very interesting coincidences that keep happening with you, and once they happen, you try to embrace them. So far ISB has had quite a few senior students, but I think till date the most senior most student was in my class. She was Dr. Radhika. She would be 50 plus. I hope she doesn't care and I don't talk about her, but yeah, she was a quite accomplished gynec, and I learned a lot from her about healthcare, and she got equally interested. We started doing healthcare projects together. All of that happened. And that's when my journey of healthcare began. So I was very clear that I would work in a small organization. And then, as luck would have it, the first firm which I joined, Median Healthcare, the founder came to ISB campus with a mandate that he wants somebody who is interested in healthcare, but not necessarily from healthcare, because folks from healthcare come with their own biases. and he was starting a consulting firm. He was the ex-CEO of Apollo Health and Lifestyle. He was starting his own consulting firm. And then I still remember I got a call from Cass saying, we don't know anybody else who fits the bill. So would you be willing to meet him over breakfast? And that is the time when we were supposed to spend 1 hour, but we spent close to a couple of hours over breakfast. And I think by the time both of us moved out of the meeting, we knew that this is happening. I did discuss any details, any specifics of the role or anything because I knew uh, some of those become inconsequential discussions. So it was a tacit understanding that I am joining, and both of us trust each other, and we'll make this work. That happened, and I ended up staying 11 years in the consulting. I started from consultant, and last role I was managing partner at the firm. And once that happened, I was again enough of in those 11 years. You can imagine 10, 11 years you have worked with most of the healthcare chains in the country because it was India Consulting, right from small entrepreneurs to Max and Apollos and Dr. Reddy's of the world. So all right here, all that happened, and then I was like, I want to do something in digital healthcare. And then again, once I decided I want to do something, you can imagine what I did. I left my job. That was the first thing I did. A- And then even the business planning started from there, and then started doing it, ran it for a few years, ran it for 1.5 couple of years. And then, Indegene that time, um, uh, Carlyle had invested, they were looking for people. Somebody from my ex consulting days introduced me to the founders, and we spoke, and it seemed like it seemed like a very good thing to pursue because the mandate was obviously fairly large. And I was very excited with, okay, there is an entrepreneurial strength and there's a fairly large mandate. So took it with both arms, did it for 4 years before deciding that let's do more in Gen AI. And then again, as you can imagine, left Indegene first and then started planning. So started doing stuff. So that's where I am.
Very interesting journey, Ritesh. So we will double click on your consulting stint and your short entrepreneurial stint post that, right? So firstly, I'm just curious, uh, why 10 years in consulting?
Why 10 years in consulting? 10 years in consulting because it had a lot of variety. So the good part about consulting is it has a lot of variety. So at a point of time, you're working with a healthcare firm, you're working with a medtech firm. I was in healthcare consulting, so giving examples from that. And you're working with a pharma firm, and suddenly you realize that you're looking at the entire healthcare dynamics and people operating very, very differently across all of these spectrums. And it becomes very fascinating, and you start becoming curious about interlinking all of those. And then there's a lot of variety. Entrepreneur versus an established brand like a Max, or a, a Dr. Reddy's versus a Striker. So a lot of variety, and that variety keeps you going, gives you a very different high altogether, which makes you keep going after chasing things and a lot of growth. So if you are joining, let's say again, whether it is a niche consulting, I frankly have some idea of how big consulting firms work, which may not be very different, but obviously it offers that variety, it offers that entrepreneurial opportunity, and a small consulting firm will offer you a lot of a small consulting firm, let's say, will offer you a big football ground to play because then you are chasing a lot of stuff. So I think the variety in consulting and the kind of problems which you encounter keep you going. So
Got it. Understood. And what were some of the key learnings, right, from your consulting stint uh, that you tend to apply even now in your career?
I, the first thing I think is first principles. So you would have heard me giving it with you a very different analog is, a farmer became a cup of coffee. I think all of that really comes down to first principles. I think one thing which I've gained is, this every problem can be solved by first principles. And I have gotten this compliments from multiple colleagues of mine, especially people who report to me that I have the ability to simplify most complex problems and dumb it down to some different extreme where it becomes easy to relate and solve. So I think that's one of the big learnings which I had, solving problems from first principles. And with that comes a caveat, like uh, one size never fits all. So what I mean by that is, don't. I think most of the consulting firms, or quite a few of them, which have exceeded. See, it's okay to have a plethora of knowledge from multiple clients, which you imbibe and solve problems differently. But one size never fits all. Try every person thinks, and rightly so, that their problems are unique. And uh, people have a big tendency of second guessing problems. So if I look at your face, I'll be the next level judgmental, that Revant has a rough day while Akia had a decent day, because Revant seems serious and Akia is smiling. It might actually be the opposite. But the problem with us is we are so quick to arrive at judgments that we think we know it all. And the third, very interesting, is listening. I think listening abilities is something which really pays dividends, and I keep telling at home and in my son's school and everywhere. Like even in colleges. Again, I'm fond of analogies, so taking this conversation a little different, but it will give you a perspective. Like everybody has debate competitions, elocution competitions. Nobody has ever been awarded ever the best listener in school or the best listener in college, because people just think that they know it all and they have to interrupt. I think consulting created a very good listening ability, empathy to deal with problems. And especially in consulting, one of the things which I really did, which kept me grounded, was a lot and lot of market research. So I still remember one of the projects which we had with GE Healthcare was to figure out a market and strategy for low cost CT scanners in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And that's when I would visit the smallest of cities, right from Kurnool, talking to a CT technician and a doctor, to going to Delhi and talking to, Mahajan Diagnostics, for that matter. I mean, you got to see both ends of the spectrum, but you were comfortable dealing with each of them. And some of those market research, and they give you perspectives, they keep you grounded, and they also give you a very different kick. When you start understanding the disparities and diversities, all that kick starts coming together. So, if I were to summarize whatever I said in this time, I think one was first principles. The second was obviously the diversity of projects. The third was listening ability, and I think not the diversity of projects, but the second was not one size fits all. So every problem became a first principle, but with the knowledge that you were armed with. So I think those three were the key takeaways. And if anybody applies it to their job, not even consulting, you can start seeing the difference within 1 month.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah.
Your result.
So, post so post your consulting stint, you went on, um, you know, s- started your company, right? So what was that all about? Why entrepreneurship from consulting?
So I really wanted to do something in digital health, and when I say digital health, I didn't want to do anything in the conventional. Let's say let's to give you as a little example, an OPD scheduling or an appointment scheduling or a better medical record for that matter. I wanted to do something radically different, and my whole point was that today, let's say there's a lot of gap in healthcare communication between, let's say, the doctor and patient. And the second is, communication takes away a lot of time of healthcare professionals like nurses. Is there a way to automate that entire communication and take work out of it? And this was pre LLM days, when we were just doing it. And that's when I got into, doing this entire speech to text bit. So if a doctor, let's say, is talking to a patient, all that he says can be transcribed, and with certain keywords, it can be actually classified into symptom diagnosis, prescription, everything. And then you can do various things about it. You can dumb it down, you can make the patient understand what it is, all of that could happen. And the other is this entire, if you have been to a hospital, you will say everybody takes notes, whether it is nurses note, round note, resident notes, this, that. Instead of doing all of that when you're talking to the patient's bedside, can the notes not be transcribed? Unless you are saying something which, which you don't want, which is again an aberration. But then again, whatever you're talking, there's no reason why whatever communications are happening can't be transcribed real time and put in patient file, pushed to patient file directly. It's just that some of that was not happening. And that's when, that was the trigger of starting this. And it's very funny that once I started this, I realized once Dragon Medical is the company which was actually doing it in US. And once we started, there were more players. I think Puneet Soni came up with Suki, and there were a lot of other players who started coming in this space. The preemptively, the change management was a very, very, very big deal in that space, which companies are still struggling with. So that was a bizarre problem.
Got it. So, given that we are at the, figuring out the problem statement, right, for someone who wants to start up from the first principles perspective, um, what do you think? Like, how should one go about choosing their business idea?
So, so I think first look at your domain, what you have been doing, and I think the ability for you to go in depth inside your domain is very, very strong. Whether it is retail, whether it is education, life sciences, healthcare, just go deep inside your domain to understand what problems have you grappled with or your customers grappled with in the past. And look at the problems and not at the solution first. And those problems you could have been facing day to day, you could have been facing regularly, something like that. I think the problem identification from a first principle is good. And as soon as you start thinking that, all first principles will start falling in place. Like, is it a big enough market? How will I be able to solve for it? How will I be able? I think the question of will I be able to solve for it does not exist now. The question is how will I be able to solve for it? What are the kind of resources and support which I'll need to solve for it? And will this obviously pay? But and before that, the first question is why do I want to do it? Do I want to do it because it sounds like something sexy to do, or do I want to do it to make a huge full amount of money? Again, not a bad problem to have till the time you are solving for it in the right ways. Perfectly fine. And that there's nothing wrong with that objective. Or is there something other objective which I'm doing for? So one of my friends started an impact consulting firm. Is he making decent money? He's making decent money. And has he found his has he found his ikigai, so as to call it? He did. And the guy is Sushant, London Business School. He did everything. He founded Kalpa Impact, and he is doing in impact consulting for all that. So basically, find what you want to do and why you want to do. And if you have a roadmap to why, it's simple. Like if you have a roadmap, like I want to make, let's say, $100 million company, and this is such a big problem that I want to make $100 million company. Till the time you are solving a problem, there is nothing wrong with making money. Until the time you make it ethically. See, if I take healthcare, there are hospitals which will fleece money from you, and that was the sad reality. That is a truth which everybody knows. And there is ITC who sells cigarette but doesn't do unethical work. They sell cigarettes and make a decent EBITDA with this they are supposed to make. So basically, there's nothing wrong with either. It's just that the way they have looked at, how do I run a business, and that's perfectly fair and fine. So, so all in all, find what you want to do and why you want to do. And I would suggest that stay within your domain, because there you have spent a whole lot of time and a whole lot of hard work. there's no reason why you should not leverage that hard work.
Sure. So, double clicking on your second answer, right, as to why one should start up, what are some of the motivations or the answers that one shouldn't look at, ideally for, why one should start up?
So I'll tell you what, don't look at don't look at starting up because yeah, you think you will be your own boss. See, being your own boss is a very difficult thing to do. It just puts a very, very different kind of pressure on your mind. Because it is not easy being your own boss. Don't do it because you think there is flexibility, there is ample flexibility. A good employer will offer you as much flexibility as your startup would offer you. There's nothing problem there because uh, because flexibility is different from hard work. If your creative juices or if my creative juices to create an app come at midnight, then so be it. I mean, nobody dictates you. So don't do it for these two reasons, and don't do it because somebody else is doing it or you are in some kind of peer pressure. I know my friends who have achieved, accomplished, and who are doing very, very well in some of the goods, innovation and otherwise, in some of the large MNC. Even are they happy about what they are doing? Yes. Are they happy about what I am doing? Or am I happy about what they are doing? Absolutely yes. I think that the key, Revant, and to any listener that I want to give is you should feel happy about 5 days of your life or 6 days of your life which you are working. And if you are 80% or 70% happy with what you are doing those 5 6 days, you will have a very good health. I mean, everything will start becoming, there will be all kinds of balance. There will be mindfulness, everything that you can imagine, what everybody punches generally. I think the whole lot of problems which people find they have either in their health or mental fatigue or anything is when you start being unhappy about those 5 6 days. If you're happy about those 5 6 days, then what are you doing? Then everything else I have seen personally starts falling into place. That doesn't mean that it can balance out all other bad habits that you and I might have. So I mean, you know whether it is munching or sweets or whether it is smoking, and work can't take care of all of those. You can have ample bad habits that can push you out, but but those 5 days, if you're doing well, it will keep you easily motivated and you'll feel very happy about it.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so Ritesh, as a professional who has constantly done good at his career, and then at beyond a point of time you have stepped out of your comfort zone to try something entirely new, and that you have done repeatedly over and over in your career. So, I mean, you would have achieved that stage wherein you must be really happy with how the career must be progressing, really enjoying your work for those 5 days of the week. But then, at what point you would get that urge to try something new and leave everything behind?
I uh, so first thing, I don't know how good I have been, so that's really subjective. But hopefully, I agree with you. Let's say, okay, and I'm happy to hear that. So which is again a good feeling, and the urge to step out of your comfort zone is I'll tell you what, if once you step out of your comfort zone, then you get a flavor of stepping out of your comfort zone again and again. And what happens is essentially, see, why did I move out of consulting? Because I thought I was done and saturated. Otherwise, who cares? I mean, you are managing partner at a consulting firm. There's, frankly, there wasn't much to complain. If I had to put it, it was all fine, and you grow it from there. Or you're doing something different, and then but stepping out of the comfort zone just gives you a very different kick in life. And stepping out of your comfort zone also gives you a lot of variety in the world. So like I was talking to you some time back, stepping out again, Indegene movement could have been stepping out of my comfort zone, but the variety which I now relish is actually building those apps myself and seeing the output myself, and problem solving, all of that. So once you get into a habit of stepping out and doing things, you will start really getting a kick out of it, which becomes very unavoidable, and you'll try doing it again and again and again. See, I tell people, and I won't reveal it obviously to you guys today, but at a certain point of time, I'll just say it is done and I retire. Because the problem with some of our personalities becomes like, if you get such a flavor of trying different things, you become very restless. So so that is some place where, I think I should have struck the right balance. I mean, but yeah, again, you get to the life is too intriguing at every stage, and nowadays we are living in, times when there's enough intrigue for you to explore. So yeah, it just gives the flavor and interesting. And like I told you, if once you start enjoying the comfort zone, then you never go.
So Ritesh, the first thing that one needs to do is obviously identifying the right problem statement, right? When one wants to start up. The next thing would be the execution phase. Now there again, probably the first one would be building out your team. Um, so for someone in that stage or in that phase, what are your recommendations, do's and don'ts? How would one go about building at least a core team?
So, so I'll tell you what, get I mean, we would have heard this again and again and again, but get people with very different complementary skills. And what I've seen in the market, they want is one more thing that don't outsource the core. A lot of time, people outsource the core to be built and then get it, and they think they can run the sales engine. Don't do that, because then the message which goes out in the market is very different. That you have not built the core. So I think to build the core, today everybody looks at one domain plus one CTO plus XYZ. But the other disclaimer is that as a founder, you will invariably get into everything, and you will have to demonstrate to your core team beyond the founding team that yes, this can be done. And for that, you will have to do it and show. So if you are not a technologist, be ready to understand and build technology. If you have not been into sales and you say that my personality is not the kind of personality which can sell, that is not an acceptable answer. If you don't understand, see, at this point of time, I'm trying to understand how HubSpot helps in marketing. A few years back, I never knew what Jira is. So I think, apart from being used as a condiment in dal, so that's a different case. But yeah, what will happen is be ready to do everything. You will absolutely be doing everything. You'll be doing accounting, you will be doing billing, this, that, you'll be doing 50 things. But, life will be enjoyable once you start doing. So be ready to do. So getting the core team is not an excuse for you not doing. Getting a core team is a good thing to augment strengths of the team, the hardcore strengths. But the soft skills is something which you will have to imbibe and build.
Understood. And going back to your startup journey, right? The first startup post your consulting stint. Um, what were some of the difficulties or challenges that you faced while running your startup, and how did you resolve those?
See, the biggest challenge I faced, which I could not resolve to full extent, was COVID. So that the priorities changed, and I think when people say, that's the first time when I realized when what does a black swan event actually mean, because nobody predicted, nobody assumed, and like I told you, I'm the kind of person who would get into it and just leave everything and then start. By the way, that experience also makes you resilient, for that matter. You leave everything, you start, and then COVID comes, and they're like, okay, let's see what happens. So but I think that was the biggest challenge. But the other challenge was, like I told exactly to you, I outsourced the code. I got somebody to build the tech for me. and which I don't think was, now if I look in hindsight, I don't think it was right for me to do that. I should have had a co-founder, and co-founder 100%, dedicated co-founder who was invested completely in the venture to build stuff, because every time there was a change, I used to go and do. And the third is, I think the challenge was also in me underestimating the pain potential of the market, and uh, taking VCs or investment firms on hearsay. And I'm sure you're looking at a qualifier for that, which I'll come upon. But yeah, a lot of stuff which a lot of stuff which could go wrong actually went wrong. Now, was the price a reflection of COVID or not? I don't know. But certainly, the complementary strengths and a full time team is, don't be a solopreneur. Have have co-founders. I would advise against being a solopreneur, though there's a lot of buzz around, the next with Jenny and everything, there's going to be a single person unicorn. As tempting as it sounds, I think there are enough problems which come with that.
Got it. Understood. No, again, slightly shifting gears, right? What do you think of the current state of the Indian startup ecosystem? Controversial question here. You must have heard what Mr. Piyush Goyal, Piyush Goyal's remarks, right? That India is not building enough deep tech startups. What's your point of view on that?
I will tell you. So, as controversial again as it may sound, I think he's absolutely right, because as a society, we are focused on, we glamorize building a better, chips, or building a better namkeen, or building a better shampoo, than building something which is very strong and research backed. Again, as controversial it may sound, because I've also experienced some of these things firsthand, and and that is where I would tell entrepreneurs or people who are starting to go with caution.
Hmm.
All investors, let's say in India, who you would hear talking about deep tech or anything, just be very wary of some of them, because what they say and what they mean might be very different. So look at their portfolio. If they are talking tech, are they investing in pure play tech startup, or are they investing in something which is tech enabled? See, Swiggy or Zomato would be tech enabled. They are not a pure tech startup. Again, nothing wrong with that. They have done and they have achieved what they should have achieved, which is fine. But then again, if you're looking at a if you're looking at a horizon where you have to really strengthen the economy and look something forward looking, you have to find investors who are willing to stay on board for a long time, and willing to take that bets. So the riskiest bet you take, the better it is. But unfortunately, Indian ecosystem or Indian investors don't believe in taking risky bets, unlike the counterparts in the West. See, somebody invested in a DeepSeek, somebody invested in OpenAI and all of those. Now, if you pitched a concept of OpenAI a few years back, and I'm sure some entrepreneurs would have pitched, one investors, and the second problem is, investors would nod their heads. They would tend to understand that this is something path breaking, but nobody is going to invest. So if you're looking at a pure play tech startup and all, or something which is forward looking, then you really need to do your research, and don't go to everybody. Really do your research. So I kind of agree with Piyush Goyal, but the only one point where I think they need to change is, they to be equally invested. So saying is one thing, which I think he's completely right. From here onwards, if he is invested, then hopefully the ecosystem will stay invested. But right now, the state of affairs is what I just mentioned.
Sure. So, Ritesh, one interesting point that you brought up in this discussion is that, uh, you know, VCs or government for that matter, they're not that invested in the in your startup ecosystem for the startup ecosystem to produce reasonable amount of deep tech startups. Why do you think that is the case? Is it because our Indian startup ecosystem is not as matured as the ones in US and China, or is there any other reason? What do you think?
Um, let me give you an example without naming Revant and Akia. Again, like I promised to you in the beginning of the podcast, I'd be as honest and bring color to it. So I think it's very fair to bring in an anecdotal example. So when I had my own startup, this was, as you can imagine, pure tech, and SaaS or no SaaS, that's a different mode. But when I approached, when I started speaking to some of the investors, there were different opinions, and I think one of the investors hinted it directly, and the other tangentially, that with all your experience in healthcare and all your networks and connects and all, why don't you do something like an aggregator model, and we will directly do a funding, no questions asked. The point is, why are you getting into all this where monetization initially is going to be difficult, etc. And what they wanted me to do is something like a pristine care model, because provider, small town, big town, healthcare, etc. You have an idea of what patients come, why do they come to the hospital? So they said, "कि यार ये tech startup क्यों कर रहे हो? Why are you getting into all this? Just do this, we'll fund you, and together we'll grow big. We'll make a big business out of it, and there will be a lot of returns coming. Let's do that." And they were like, "You decide and create the model tomorrow, and we'll do that." Now, as tempting as it sounds, if you have decided and made your mind to do something, you don't want to digress from your vision. And that's exactly the problem with the Indian venture ecosystem, where they are not willing to be invested in startups which will give returns later, but which they don't understand. Like we are talking about comfort zone, I don't think today the startup venture ecosystem, as much as they say, are willing to get out of the comfort zone, and that's a big, big, big problem, crippling the entire funding industry. I think there are a lot of people who want to do good in tech. I'm sure there would be somebody for the deep research which we don't even know in India, and somebody would have thought about it for sure. I mean, if I'm talking about pre-COVID era, and then there was some shape or form of private LLM which I was using, which somebody had actually created. Now, imagine the guy who created that private LLM for me, which could understand Indian languages and do a lot of stuff. There is no reason why will and that time he used to speak about neural networks when I didn't even know what is a neural network. And neural network is, by the way, foundational of LLMs and all of that. So if that time he had created something, there was no reason with, and I'm talking about what, 2019 or so. So at that point of time, 2018-19, if he had created something like that, there is no reason why some shape or form of an Indian LLM would not have been born in India with the right encouragement, with the right research partners, with the right ecosystems. I think the way to move it would be from the government through our educational institutions, be it triple IT or IIT or all of those, and they taking a pioneering lead in being a strong investment arm. See, today there is UGC. UGC funds a lot of research and everything happens. I know because my parents are both professors, and I have an idea of them. But essentially, that kind of funding goes into this entire startup ecosystem. Then why not? People can achieve uh, miracles out of it.
Hmm. Got it. And you think when you look at the government, some founders they've commented that it's also got to do with hey, we are doing our part, but then if you look at it, the turnaround time in getting the necessary approvals and also the transparency involved, that's also an issue.
Mm, I frankly, the turnaround time, transparency issue on whose side? On the government side, you're saying? Oh,
Government side, yeah, government side, yes. especially if you want to secure approvals related to semiconductors. Few founders, I think one of the founders, I'm not sure on what platform, brought up this issue.
I frankly, Devant, would not have a reason to believe either way. I'm a big fan of a book called Factfulness. Unless I have facts, I don't generally avoid to comment. So I won't be able to comment on that. I personally don't have a first-hand experience or an anecdotal numbers to prove it either way, right
Fair.
or wrong.
Fair. All right, take care. Over to you.
Sure, sure. So Ritesh, just taking the discussion ahead, I had a thought. I mean, I read it somewhere that once an entrepreneur is always an entrepreneur. So do you kind of resonate with that? Because I can see that you started with your own entrepreneurial venture, then you worked with Indegene for a brief while, and then you set out to start all over again.
I do believe in that, Akya. I believe in that strongly. Because and okay, the funny incident is when I was leaving Indegene, and people didn't believe me. People thought that I'm hiding something, that I'm joining some large GCC as some head, all or some kind of a extremely glamorous role, and that's why I'm not telling anybody anything. And people, they were they were they were enough. I heard from somebody that he's joining at some senior position in ZS. Somebody guessed Amgen. Somebody said Lily, and all sorts of names. And obviously, I heard those people used to call me to ask. But what people don't realize is what you exactly said, that if you have a heart to do it, you will do it. The only thing which I won't do is to obviously repeat the mistake, because then there's no bigger fool than me. Like, I won't do this as a solo journey. I will be very, very, very cognizant of my weaknesses. I would, at this point of time, much rather join a team which has founded something or running something as a co-founder, to take them to next level, rather than and join as a co-founder itself. So it will be an entrepreneur. It will be I would love to be a co-founder with them. But what I realized over course of time is there's so many pockets of, like, Devant, just sometime asked, is it a function of the ecosystem where there are not too many startups? I don't think that would be right from whatever I've seen. There are people who are doing good work, and it doesn't make sense to start another company which does the same but good work. It just makes sense to augment forces and do it together. I was at one of the conferences, BioAsia in Hyderabad. I think it was late January or so. I was there.
Yeah.
There were a lot of pharma companies, a lot of folks, and there were a lot of startups as well in the room, or in couple of rooms also. But the way I saw the diversity, right from manufacturing to trials to content to automation, everything, even they would not be sufficient to cater to the demand. So but if they have done something good, just tag along and make them achieve. In startups ecosystem, I think one word which everybody says, but it has a much deeper meaning, is collaboration. And some investment firms do really good job at it, where founded dating or whatever you call it. Because if you're doing something and the other person is keen to do something, it just becomes like a matchmaking, and augment forces do it together and achieve all milestones together. And I think the fundamentals are certainly uh, get based on trust. And what I've seen is in startups ecosystem, and I firmly believe that trust is much more than you would see in corporates. And this again is from my experience. One startup trusting other startup. People, their startups would call me to solve problems in healthcare and life sciences. Do I feel bad about it? Absolutely not. They are good friends, and the world is such a big playground for everybody to play. I mean, the kind of trust which will be there is very, very different than you can imagine. Where so you won't see the same kind of trust, and between a Cognizant and an Accenture, but the same trust you would see in similar to startups, where somebody will call you that how can this problem be solved, and you would actually coach them that solve it like this, and you'll be home. So I think the startup ecosystem and entrepreneurs are fairly right. They collaborate with each other. They trust each other. It's just the right time. And some of those are, so like I told you, I won't be a solopreneur. I would much rather tag along with somebody who's doing good job to help him do even better. And in process, you also do better. See, whatever objectives I have of, let's say, to do with my life, if they are being met with doing it with somebody, that would be nice. The one thing which I certainly crave as a part of being an entrepreneur is creativity and freedom. I think, these two as an entrepreneur become very, very non-negotiable in your head. So I think the creativity and freedom, like I spoke about those 5 or 6 days of the week, if you have creativity, if you have ample freedom, and then again, everybody is responsible. See, uh, as a second time founder, it's not like you don't report to anybody. You report to shareholders. More importantly, you report to yourself. You report to family. I mean, today, if family is supporting me to do some of these things, so there's no reason why I should not be responsible or answerable to the family. Support and nothing can be one way. And the either love, affection, support, nothing is one way street. You have to reciprocate it. So there's a lot of people or stakeholders you are answerable to. So I think that's where a lot of things converge. And once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur.
I think you ended it with a very, very positive and a very beautiful note, Ritesh. And I think one thing found very interesting in what you have mentioned is that the startup ecosystem is such that the players see each other as collaborators and, aim to like help each other out to achieve the greater good, which is something really noble and nice.
Then no, and even other example, like, yeah, I've seen people where they have problem statements coming from client. They don't have a dev team. They take dev team from another startup who is in the same business, but they take dev team from that startup. Nobody's worried about somebody stealing their IP or something in these days. Everybody is like, let's do it. I want to. Their objectives are very clear. I want to make revenue. I want to do good things. I want to deliver big things. Just do it together. What you know, and the entire mistrust will take nobody anywhere. And Cognizant and Accenture, some of those big players can afford not to trust each other. But as startups, the more you trust each other, the more everyone goes.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Ritesh, like now that you are a second time entrepreneur, I mean, I'm really curious to know what is your core motivation and what is something that drives you to, tackle a problem statement and then, work on it with full heart and soul.
Same, the creativity and freedom. I think, because you know problem statements, there are clients and your accomplices who trust you blindly. And that's a very heavy burden to carry on your shoulders. But with that comes creativity and freedom. And creativity and freedom is like, you can solve any problems of the world. I mean, like I told you just before we started, I was actually I'm so tempted to open it again after my podcast, which I'll try to avoid. But then, you get the kick of solving problems which you're not. I was building nodes within an AI framework to actually plot sub use cases and give the right commands and everything. It just becomes bizarre, the kind of creativity. In some other place, somebody would have said, "Hey, matlab, why? Why do you have to do this?" But once you are doing it, then matlab, what you are getting out of doing it. So there's a lot of creativity, a lot of freedom, a lot of things to experiment and try out without being, irrational or illogical or all of those. Because like I told you, and till the time you have it in your mind that you have to be answerable to somebody, you will have creativity and freedom, but you will be answerable for all that creativity and freedom that you did. So
Of course, I mean, creativity and freedom, but of course, there has to be a balance as well because you're not only answerable to the stakeholders. I mean, you're also answerable to your family, as you rightly said. And
correct.
you have to strike a balance in between.
You have to follow the balance. See, I still spend long hours, but I still manage to pick up my son from school once a while. So so you have to strike balance across everywhere. And the moment you start enjoying, work, I think everything else gets taken care of. You don't have to break your head.
Definitely, definitely. So, Ritesh, sometime back in your conversation, you had mentioned that if you were to start again as an entrepreneur, you won't do it like a solopreneur journey. So, let's say if you were to bring in few co-founders uh, alongside you to start on a new venture, would you prefer more experienced co-founders, or would you prefer more fresh blood who is like excited to just take up and work on a problem statement?
Okay. Since I have to be direct and, I'd consider this as a rapid fire question, the short answer would be fresh blood. And it has been shaped because of my experiences. What I've seen, fresh blood doing is quite a few amazing things. And they are very upbeat, they are very gung ho to do things. And, they're, see, more importantly, one thing which I notice in fresh blood is they are very eager to learn. And I think that's one quality which the times which we are living in is very, very important. It is not what you have learned. It is very important to unlearn and be as eager to learn, be as eager to embrace what you are doing. So the short answer is fresh blood. The right answer could be a mix of both, but the preference will always be for a fresh blood.
Understood, understood. And Ritesh, like one last question from my side. What would you tell your pre-MBA self if you were to give a message?
Oh God. Okay. So pre-MBA self, when you say, does it mean the pre-MBA stays in the college, or pre-MBA before before actual MBA started? So should I discount the MBA period, or should I?
So basically, like as an individual, the way you were before you did the ISB journey, what would you tell your pre-MBA self? I mean, in a sense, like the person you were back then about how things will shape up, or any message that you want to leave for your old self.
Don't listen to what people want you to do. That's the first thing, because I think our generation came from a point where we still listen to what people want us to do, and we get very accommodated. That's one. I think don't listen to what others want you to do. That's the first message. Uh, the other, I think, is uh, crucial is, and it's again a controversial topic which has been spoken across multiple forums. So I don't want to get into an unending debate of whether it is 15 hours or 50 hours or 70 or 80, 90 hours a week. But I think either thing, when you're starting, just when you're starting, I mean, when you're starting your career, even post MBA or pre MBA, just do it with some different level of machinery wheel, because the amount which you grasp during that times in terms of the experience is what shapes your future. So I mean, so you don't have to do it at the cost of your health, but cut out all distractions from your life, and you will. But anybody who hears this, will, I'm sure, if they practice, send me a thank you postcard at some point of time. So if just listening to this, because this is extremely important. Just cut out all distractions, and you will really reach where you are supposed to. And one final word of advice is, in your first job, whether it is pre MBA, post MBA, uh, very important to observe a lot and listen a lot, because in the times of in the world we are living in, where there was always Google, and today there is always Perplexity or Gemini to give you everything which is out there in secondary sources. Observing things, shaping your experiences, talking to people, is something which will mold your future, especially important during these times. It is always important, but I think during these times, the entire observation and interacting with people and gaining a very different perspective and experience is very important, because the more you gain perspectives firsthand, the more those perspectives will get shaped at later stages of your career, when you have all information available at your source. For example, if let's say, If we were to say, how does Whitefield, how is Whitefield as a locality? Your entire, anybody in few years from now will have all observations, and they would be math wizards. The population, elderly, this, that, everything. They'll slice and dice. But what will shape your experiences is, like, have you actually stayed there? Do you know what it feels like to be in Whitefields in Bangalore? So the entire perceptions, the entire observations, is something which will pay dividends in your career. And absolutely, we are talking about workplace. Whitefield again was just an analogy. So I think those three things are very important. Put your heart and soul, cut out distractions, observe, listen, and during your work. And the antithesis of it is, don't listen to what the world wants you to do. Just do what you want to do and run with the bomb.
Definitely, definitely. That's a beautiful message to leave behind, not just to your older self, but also to all the listeners we have for this specific podcast. And yes, certainly.
Like, okay, since you asked that, uh, I I tell people, and there's nothing wrong to admit in a forum. I think, whatever I have, wherever I have reached today, I could, and anybody else should reach here in 3 4 years less than. And I have a reason for saying so. I'm not trying to be a motivational speaker or a sadguru here, but essentially why I'm saying this is because I know I have wasted 3 4 years of my life. I know, there have been times where I have done the same thing, and I continue doing the same thing for whatever reasons. I have no idea. I selected a career which I was not interested in at the start of my career. So I have made my fair share of mistakes, and I think anybody else who is listening to this, at least, and again, I can only comment on my journey. There are individuals who have achieved much, much, much heavier success than me. But if I look at me as an individual, today, if I reflect upon myself, I think I should have reached where I am in, 3 4 years lesser than where I am today. Nothing bad about it. Not that it gives me sleepless nights, but when you started telling me to look in hindsight, I think it's very important that I take a very hard look at it in hindsight. So yeah.
I mean, I really respect the message that you brought forward, Ritesh, but also have a bit of a different opinion, especially in terms of wasted years, because maybe even that period taught you something, or maybe even that period gave you some perspective that helped you grow later in your career.
No, I agree with Bob. Completely agree. But I mean, I the okay. I think since we are on the messaging path here, I think, the more you exaggerate being self-critical of yourself, the easier it is to obviously start admitting your mistakes. I completely agree. There's learnings from those mistakes, and I think, I was able to recover some of that time as well. I'm not saying it was as what do you call it, math, as linear as it was supposed to be. But yeah, I think another, since we are on that message spree, I think another message is, always be self-critical of yourself. I think it always helps.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think that helps us build a growth mindset as well, like that we want to consciously improve.
Correct, correct. And it's not about some appraisals and all which happen in corporates. And I never aligned on appraisal. Everybody wants to fit you in some stereotypical curve. So this is not an appraisal. This is more of a inward reflection which you have, and suddenly you start realizing, like we do 2 3 things differently from tomorrow. So
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, Ritesh, with this, we have come towards the end of our podcast. We really, really appreciate you taking out the time for this discussion. It's been wonderful talking to you, and certainly hope we keep in touch.
no, no, absolutely. And for all listeners of this podcast, whoever is listening, I think where we started on this journey and what we spoke about, one of the most important things is to feel happy in times where you are living in social media, all of that and everything. When we spoke about 5 days a week and all of those, I think the most important thing is not to make others happy. Or not to prove that you are happy. The most important thing is you feel happy 5 days a week, and that is something which only you can decide and you can judge for yourself. Whatever it is, if it makes you happy for 5 to 6 days, whatever you are working, wherever you are working, 7 days, whatever it is, if it keeps you happy, just go for it. And I think that is the most underrated and underrated in today's time. So all the best, everyone, and like I always tell, all of you will achieve milestones much more accelerated, much more faster, and always there to help. And if anybody wants coordinates or anything, always there to help. All the best.
Thank you, Ritesh.
Thank you, Ritesh.
Thank you.